talk about your epiphanies. What brought you out?
All right, I call this one the birthday epiphany. Right? And this is one I had at 30. And this is all going back to, as a child, I knew that people generally did not like me. You know, I didn't know why. I kind of wish they did like me. And when I say people, I mean girls is really what I mean. I couldn't care about guys because I had no kind of bond with my father. But when I was 30, I had the birthday epiphany. All right, and when I was growing up, it was in the 60s, and all the hippies and the counterculture and all the huge change that was going on in the society. And I remember as a very young child, in the late 50s, early 60s, the high school would have the sock hop, you know, the dances for the high school kids.
Oh, like in Greece?
Like in Greece, or like in even Happy Days.
Yeah.
They all had the sock hop. But when the 60s came, all of a sudden that was not cool. You know, that was kind of what the administration wanted us to do, so that all went by the wayside. And I also noticed as a child that kids going to birthday parties sort of followed in that same vein, where that just all of a sudden no one ever went to birthday parties. Today they have these extravagant birthday parties all the time.
Yeah.
But back in the 60s, they didn't have birthday parties.
Interesting.
I thought. When I was 30 and I started talking to some people who were having young children when they were 30s or in their 30s, and they were complaining about all the birthday parties they now had to go to. And I remember saying specifically to one of them, yeah, things are really different than when we grew up and nobody had any birthday parties. And they looked at me like I was like out of my mind, and they go, what are you saying? What are you talking about? He said, that's all I did as a kid was go to birthday parties. And I thought, what? There were no birthday parties? And he said, it was every week. And then I talked to other people, and they said, and what it was is the kids hated me so much, so perfectly, I never got invited. No one ever spoke to me about them. No one ever made any reference to them because they were afraid I might show up, I think. And I actually grew up thinking that birthday parties were no longer, part of the growing up experience.
Good Lord.
And so that was one big epiphany, and I realized how perfectly they all hated me that much. I didn't go to one birthday party, and I just thought, and I think about my mother. She used to go get her hair done at Gino's, I think, every week. And she had to have been hearing the other mothers talking about birthday parties and everything. And, she wasn't hearing about them, obviously. But then I kind of learned, she thought, well, I was a real individual and I just wasn't interested in that kind of stuff. Was sort of her explanation. I learned later.
Your mum thought that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When in fact you were just ignorant of the fact that there were birthday parties. Don't get me wrong, I only had two.
Well, see, hello.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm kind of jealous you had that many.
I went to two. I had one, Christine. She used to fancy me, and then there was Michael, who was the. What should we say? Went to the birthday party and the sandwiches were hard. That was my experience, mate. So join the club.
Well,
join the club. But I think a lot of the kids, because a lot of kids at my school, their fathers worked for the local newspaper, which meant that they could rent the club for cheap and that sort of thing. And I was never invited to those. Or they'd go to a game, a Coventry City football game. I was never invited to those. But who cared? I really didn't care, because after discovering that I was going to be an international megastar, I didn't give a shit. No, that never worked out either.
Well, and then I explained, as a kid, my life was primarily TV shows.
Of watching them?
Watching them.
Okay.
And I would see some things on the TV shows, parents being nice to their kids or things like that. One of my favorite shows was The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves. Mm-hmm. It was black and white originally, able to leap tall buildings with a single bound, And I knew that was just Hollywood. I knew that was not real. So when I saw, like in My Three Sons or Leave It to Beaver, I don't know if you've ever heard of those. They're family shows back from the 50s and 60s. And I saw the parents being nice and kind of loving to the kids. In my mind, that was on the same level as the Superman, as far as not being real. That was just something that happened in Hollywood. And I named my book, Superman Landed in My Backyard. And I'm getting to the biggest epiphany that I ever had. And I call it Superman Landed in My Backyard because I'd watched George Reeves in The Adventures of Superman on TV, and their special effects were so bad. In some of them, you could even see quick shots of the wires that were holding him up while he was flying. All right. But then I thought, how would I have felt then? Oh, okay, thanks. It's this. And notice he's all in yellow.
Is that available on Amazon?
Yes.
Okay.
Superman Landed in My Backyard.
Okay.
How would I feel if all of a sudden I was in my backyard and George Reeves as Superman came flying in and landed in my backyard? My whole belief foundation would be shattered right there because this is real. I mean, all right. And so the biggest epiphany I ever had was one day I was following, and I'll use the name Tom Collins, home from school. And I used to follow the kids as they would walk in their groups home from school for lunch. All right, I never walked with them, but I kind of thought that if I sort of walked behind them, that made me feel like I was part of the group in my mind. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm following him home, and he's cutting down the driveway that goes along the side of his house. And I'm following 20, 30 feet behind him. And he rounds the corner to the back of his house, and at the back of his house was a staircase that went up to a porch. And at the bottom of the staircase, his mother was waiting for him. All right? And just as I rounded the corner was at the moment he ran into his mother's loving arms, and she buried him in a big, deep hug, like, welcome home, I love you. And I almost dropped to my knees. I mean, I felt like I had just seen Superman land in my backyard. And I can remember thinking, oh my God, people in real life really do this kind of thing.
Amazing. I
mean, I was stunned that a mother would show their son that kind of physical attraction in a big, deep, it blew my mind. I had just seen Superman land in my backyard. So I remember cutting through the hedges, going to my house where my mother had my bologna and cheese sandwich waiting for me. I ate it real quick because I was still thinking it was all fake, what I had just seen. Kind of like it had been set up for a TV show or something. So I quickly ate, and I went back to the hedge right along Tom Collins' house and waited for him to come down the steps to go back to school. Because I wanted to find out if this was for real. This was not just Hollywood. So he walked down, he was going up the side of his house, and I caught up to him. And he didn't really want to talk to me, but I kind of said, wow, it looks like your mother really likes you. I remember that's the exact words I said. And he said, oh yeah, I can tell my mother anything. I mean, she'll listen to anything I have to say. And it was at that moment I thought, damn, this really happens in real life. All that stuff I saw on TV happens. I just had never experienced it. So that was a huge epiphany to me right there, that my life was very, very different.
Do you ever feel that your father blocked your mother from showing affection, or do you think it was it was inherent in your mother's
Yes, because later on in life, my grandmother commented to my mother's sister, my aunt, that she wished that my mother had been more, I think she said affectionate or
demonstrative.
Yes, kind of thing. She didn't use that, but so.
Yeah.
And then, so it's like these are the epiphanies, and then there's 2 or 3 more that I have that are shaking the foundation of my understanding to the point where I'm beginning to understand that I'm not right. You know, there's something very wrong here with me. And I started, the first thing I wanted to learn was how to talk to women. You know, I remember I was in 6th grade, the seat in front of me was empty, and a girl named Tammy came in midterm, and I was just madly in love with her now too.
Tammy? Yeah.
Tammy, and she actually wore a bra.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, so it was 6th grade.
That's a big deal.
I was 12. It was like almost more than I could imagine.
Yep. I cry over that. I cry over Jane Parsons.
And I can remember looking at her, and she had beautiful straight hair.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, which was the fad back then. Everyone had straight hair. And I would say to her, gee, your hair doesn't look at all stringy today. And in my mind, I was telling her, oh, you have beautiful hair. Or then one day I think I said, yeah, you don't look fat at all today. And again, I, in my mind, was telling her how beautiful she looked to me.
Yeah.
But,
yeah,
you know, because I did not know how to form a compliment.
Yeah.
So, as part of my recovery, I watched TV because she had very negative reactions to what I said, go figure. And I watched on TV, and this is when I had learned that people really do hug on TV. And I saw actors saying nice things to female actresses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I said, oh, this must really happen. So I can remember being up in my room practicing saying a compliment. Because I never had heard one, didn't know. And the very first compliment that I practiced was, gee, your hair looks pretty today. And it sounded funny to me. It felt awkward. Yeah. You know, it's like, I didn't realize I was saying something nice made me feel so awkward, you know, but that was my first compliment.
Yeah, and compliments are contextual. So I worked at a bar, an underground bar, in my university days when I was young and fresh-faced. So the context, because I was a cool bartender and at the Royal Welsh College, meant that I could say to a girl, you want to have sex? And she'd say no, and I'd say, mind if I do? You know, but it was all, with females, it's all about context, and it's all about the indifference. We are physical beings. We look at the physical attraction.
Sure.
Girls, what girls do is they assess how the guy makes them feel, and that's the difference. They are not interested in sex at the beginning, not at all. I think they are interested in...
I don't know if I agree 100%, but I agree partially with what you're saying.
Warmth, security, are they childbearing? But of course, the younger the girl, I mean, you see the 13, 14-year-old get pregnant on the council estate in Britain, all those rules go out the window. But as you go to college, as you age, as you become a little bit more cultured, you know, the pool of girls is there. Well, of course, after you get a 30, 40, 50. It's like that plant, what is it? The Venus flytrap's closed. But I accept your point. I'm sorry I interrupted.
Oh, no, please. So again, to kind of reiterate for people who might be struggling with depression, the signs of depression that you might recognize in yourself. Of course, everyone knows I feel sad, I feel empty. I feel hopeless, I feel irritable, I'm angry. But the physical attributes of depression for me was I never slept. So I was sort of living in a fog, all the time. And I just never slept right. So I was sleep deprived. And I can remember back in the first grade having that problem. And that lasted till I was 30, like I mentioned earlier before.
Did you ever take anything for it?
No. No.
Do you to this day?
Uh-uh.
Just your oxygen?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but that's not for sleep. Here's another red flag for someone that might be depressed. As I mentioned earlier before, it interferes with your ability to encode memories.
Yeah.
Which is a big part of learning. All right. It was funny at school when I started a new semester, and I have two more examples of this, the depression would kind of lift. So I would say my brain was working at about 80% capacity at the beginning of the semester. Mm-hmm. And we would have our first test, and I would get a big old fat A on that one. Mm. But then a week or two would pass, and the depression would start growing. So now my mind is working at maybe 70%. And where it was working at 80% previously when I got the A, I could read one page of the textbook and absorb most of the information. I might have to review it. After the second week, I might have to read that same page of information 2, maybe 3 times in order to absorb the same amount of information that I was able to absorb the first week. Then the 4th and 5th week would come, my brain is now working at 60%. The depression is slowly deteriorating my ability to learn. And so on the second test, I would get maybe a B plus. On the third test, I would get maybe a C or C minus kind of thing. And then by the time the final came, that depression started to total overwhelm me, where I could read one page and get all the information pretty much through that one reading. But by the end of the semester, I could read that same page 10 times and not learn as much as I did at the beginning of the semester when I read that page just one time.
Oh, yeah. Makes total sense. It's like me with the script.
Like with the what?
With the Vanity Fair script, when I first had my marriage breakup. Before that it was all photographic memory. And by the end, when I was at the bottom of the barrel, of course, I was reading things that didn't sink in, and had to listen to it every day on the way to the theatre just to make it stick. And it's exactly the same.
Well, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And the other thing, though, is that was how every class went for me.
Yeah.
Every class. And I'm still a little surprised today that a teacher didn't pick up on that. But I guess if you're only teaching one class and see it, but the student goes A, B, C, D, but see, I was able to average out to like a B minus. So which is honorable.
It's still a good pass.
Yeah, it's a good pass, yeah, but...
You wanted to be valedictorian?
No, I was not. But the only reason I was able to do that is because the first 2 tests I did so well on, but then the depression would overwhelm me.
That's symptomatic of the depression.
Okay, and I want people to recognize that.
I've learned Hamlet, I've learned Angelo, Measure, I've learned Biff and Death of a Salesman. Vanity Fair, what the hell? I can't remember it. And the swimming pool just gave me that one environment. this means you learn your lines. And it worked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the swimming pool.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was
wow.
Because people used to say, why are you wearing headphones all the time? It's my lines, my Vanity Fair lines. They didn't know I was in Vanity Fair, they just thought I was listening to music. And that's how it started. So, again, context.
Well, then I'm going to go right off of that and talk about swimming.
Sure.
You know, as I said, I was pretty much a champion swimmer as a kid.
Yeah.
All right. But swim practice was horrible for me. It was painful because I was living with chronic clinical depression and trying to swim 2 miles, and it was just mentally fatiguing, which made it physically fatiguing. And I'll tell this quick story just to show you again how everyone felt about me. I was a sophomore in high school, so 10th grade. And in the United States, Mark's from England, so things are a little different there. So there's the 11th and 12th grade.
Sure.
So I was sophomore. I was in 10th grade. I still had 2 more years of high school.
Okay, so you're in year 11 in England, yeah.
And I can remember this like it was yesterday. For some reason, and I can't explain it, the depression lifted for like 3 or 4 weeks. It's all of a sudden, I felt good. It was, I don't know what caused it, what brought it on, but all of a sudden that practice, I could work hard. I felt good at practice instead of feeling bad at swim practice. It was the strangest thing to feel good. And I worked so hard the first week of that, I was on a relay and we broke our high school record. Now, I came from a high school that had over 3,000 students in it. And we were what they call Quad A, which was the top high school. And we were a swimming power, considered a swimming power. We had had a swim team at our high school for 30 or 40 years, and we're a swimming power. So I'm in 10th grade with 3 seniors, and we broke a school record for that relay. And I remember the next morning in homeroom class, they had a box up on the wall that made morning announcements. I thought, I wonder, I knew people like sports heroes, so I was kind of anxious for this news to get out because I figured when people realized how good I was at sports, people were going to like me, because everyone likes people that are good at sports, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, all right, so the announcer came out and he said, well, in yesterday's swim meet, the swim relay team of Norris, Johnson, Smith, and Alcoa broke the record in the 4x50 relay. And I thought, let's see if anyone notices that Norris was in that name. And no one in my homeroom reacted, said anything. So I thought, yeah, they probably didn't realize that Norris was me. So I was still feeling good, and I was working out. The next week, I swam the 200 individual medley. Now, for people who aren't swimmers, that's one of the most grueling races in high school sports. You got to swim 2 laps of butterfly, 2 laps of backstroke, 2 laps of breaststroke, and 2 laps of freestyle.
Wow.
As fast as you can. And in 10th grade, I broke the school record by a second and a half. And I was now a 10th grader with 2 high school records at a swimming power, faster than anyone had ever swum there. And I thought the next morning, I can't wait till this gets out on the announcements because people are going to like me now. They're going to know. And so I remember hearing the announcement, and in yesterday's swim meet, Jeff Norris broke the record in the 200 IM. And later today, we have a meeting in the library and that's all they said. I was kind of hoping they were going to kind of say swimming sensation, Jeff Norris or something. But I was kind of pretending to look at my desk thinking, I wonder if people are going to clap when they hear that I broke this record. And so I kind of was pretending not to pay attention. And then I kind of looked around, nothing. Nobody was looking at me. Nobody said anything. In the whole school, nobody said anything. I mean, this is how universally disliked I was. So then the next week came, and I swam the 50 freestyle, which is just 2 laps of the pool as fast as you can. That's the fastest event, and I broke the high school record for that. So now I'm a 10th grader with 3 high school records. And I thought, well, the IM, people don't know what individual medley is when he said that on the loudspeaker for the announcements. That's why nobody cheered or anything like that. But everybody knows what freestyle is, and everyone knows what the 50 freestyle is, and now I am the fastest swimmer that has ever come through that school. And I was waiting for the big build-up on the announcer to say, swimming sensation, sophomore Jeff Norris just became the fastest swimmer ever to walk through the halls of this high school. Nothing like that. And in yesterday's meet, Jeff Norris broke the 50 freestyle record. And later today, we have the AV meeting, and there was no big, and I thought, well, now people are now know that I've got the 3rd record in 3 weeks. I'm a swimming sensation in my mind, and I'm wondering, are people going to come, slap me on the back? Are they going to clap? Are they going to cheer? Are they going to go, way to go, Jeff, when they hear that I've just broken my 3rd record in 3 weeks? Nothing. 0. Nobody looked at me. Nobody said anything. I walked through the halls of 3,000 kids. I went back to the swim. Not a single teacher, kid, or anything. Even my parents, nobody said, Jeff, congratulations. And I thought, and I figured out what the problem was then. Nobody likes swimming. That was my thought process why nobody cared about swimming. It wasn't that I was so universally disliked, nobody wanted to say anything, but I figured it out, nobody likes swimming. So
nobody gives a shit about the theatre program unless you make it to Broadway. They really don't.
Well,
it's the same damn thing.
I thought somebody might say, way to go for 3 records as a 10th grader.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I realized, I hate coming to swim practice. It's so hard. Why am I doing this? And that's when I figured out, I gotta get into another sport. And I looked around, and I remember seeing a 10th grade kid talking to one of the senior cheerleaders. And the 10th grade kid was on the junior varsity football team. So obviously the problem was girls don't like swimmers, they like football players.
That's right. That's right.
That's what was going on in my mind.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They do.
Yeah, but that's not what the problem was.
Well, the problem again for high school is perception. They don't want to go out with a gay actor. They want to be seen with one of the soccer players. That's the deal.
Yeah, but the whole point of this exercise was just, I don't care if you're in track or bowling, if somebody announces that some 10th grader just broke 3 high school records, you would think somebody would say, way to go.
Did it not make the yearbook?
No.
Shit.
It didn't make, nobody said anything to me.
Right.
But that's how universally disliked I was. To be that good of an athlete, breaking records like crazy, and after that 3rd record, when I got no recognition from girls, I slipped into a deep, deep, deep depression. Deep depression. And it was at that time I knew that I was never going to swim that fast again in my life. I could feel it. I felt so bad walking around. I could hardly walk. I slipped in, and so that's when I decided I had to get out of swimming.
Good Lord. Okay. And I mean, can you talk about the symptoms at that time? Was it oversleeping? Was it not being able to function?
Oh.
Was it not being able to speak? I mean, what are the symptoms that are signs?
Total lack of ability to concentrate
Yeah.
on anything.
Yeah.
And people say this a lot. It felt like I was walking around in a fog. I mean, it was almost, I think even my vision was affected, that I was so depressed and I was tired, I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's all the classic signs of depression that I didn't realize I was suffering at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I didn't, but I knew I was feeling so bad that 3 weeks of feeling good was great, but it was gone forever.
How do you feel now?
I almost feel like those 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
I went back to swimming when I was 50, and I was on some relays that broke some Georgia records, you know, for
Yeah.
old people.
great.
But I say that made us competitive with the 13-year-old girls, you know, when we're, as far as our time. But
I, as an outsider, look at you're a successful businessman. You have a superb house, a superb lot, a view of one of the most beautiful lakes in Georgia. I mean, you've made it. So, you know, how does that make you feel?
it feels good, but that all didn't start till I was 50.
Really, the whole collection of the success.
I mean, I started
Yeah.
putting everything together and solidifying. And like I said, now all of a sudden yellow, I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
That's one of the side effects. That
My life
everything
started
is-
breaking apart at 50, and it was not because I wanted it to, because I love my wife to death, but you know what happened anyway.